Well, I don't know why you look so surprised. After all, if you want to learn about the trial of the man you call Jesus, you're going to have to hear it from me. I was as close to him as one can get. And I was important. But you want to know what it was like, so I suppose I can take my time to talk to you. It's true that even people like you have a right to know. Look at me. I'm sure you can see I am no ordinary run-of-the-mill fabric. I'm not ordinary clothing that ordinary people like you would wear. I am made of the finest quality material ever woven into cloth. The greatest care was taken when I was made, to be sure. There were no flaws. I would be acceptable even to royalty. I was cared for and given the finest texture, the softest sheen, the smoothness of a baby's skin. And then I was soaked in dye to give me the deepest royal scarlet color. I was handed over to the best of tailors, and they shaped me into a royal robe fit for a king, or, well, in my case, the governor. That's how it started. But there are some unusual twists and turns as we travel through the road of life. Oh, to be sure, I was discovered immediately to be the finest garment available. I was carefully wrapped and delivered to the palace, following a scrutiny by the governor and his wife. I was given a position of honor in the royal closet. I had it made. Being the finest of my kind, I was chosen to attend all of the fine and fancy functions that royalty are privileged to. I went to the parties and the banquets and the affairs of state. And I was even worn around the palace just because I made him feel so good. Oh, I felt sorry for the other robes. They were neglected when I was chosen. But that's what happens when you are the very best. Oh dear, I sound dreadfully stuck up, I suppose. It's easy to get caught up in the glory of the past and forget who you really are. And then, poof, I was really shattered when my bubble finally popped. You see, there came a day when a finer robe was brought to the governor, a robe imported from some foreign country, a robe fresh and new, a robe free of any signs of wear, a robe that had no stains on it, a robe that took the governor's attention away from me, and I was devastated. I hung in the closet, and I just hung there. It felt as though I hung there forever. One day, one of the governor's servants came in and did some spring cleaning. Guess who got tossed aside? I ended up in a pile with a bunch of other old clothes. Well, I have to admit it. We were now rags. And I did notice some stains that I had never paid attention to before. The governor, he was sloppy. He could spill anything he put his hands on. I hadn't realized how visible those stains were. I guess I just did not want to see them. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't realize how much time I was spending on myself. It has to do with the event that you asked me about, the crucifixion of that prophet, Jesus. Well, the rags and I mean the old clothes, we were laying there in our pile when all of the commotion started outside. An angry crowd was out there yelling, "Crucify him, crucify him." And then a soldier came into the room, talked to one of the servants. A servant came over to the pile and fumbled around. All of a sudden, I felt her hand tighten on my hem. She pulled me out from the middle of the pile. The soldiers took me outside. He showed me to the other guards. They laughed. Others came over and to see what was so funny, and they began laughing too. I was humiliated. I couldn't help it that I was wrinkled and stained. The governor did that to me. It wasn't my fault. Why were they laughing at me? And then I got a glimpse of the one who was on trial. He was standing in the center of the courtyard. He was wearing a crudely woven crown made of thorns. His forehead was stained with blood that flowed from that crown. And he just stood there. And all the while, they kept yelling, "Crucify him!" The noise reached a crescendo when the soldiers held me up in the center of the courtyard. Let me hang there so all could see I was royal. I was scarlet, a royal robe. And they could also see that I was stained and worn and wrinkled. I was ashamed beyond my wildest dreams. But don't feel sorry for me. If you have any feelings at all, focus on that humble figure standing here. And I was wrapped around him to make fun of the fact that he called himself the King of the Jews. You can't imagine how funny people thought that was. The laughter was deafening. I wish I could just go back into the room and be with the pile of rags. Here, all this time, I had been feeling sorry for myself. I had been draped over the shoulders of kings and governors. I fit them perfect without wrinkle, wear, or stain. But I had never known what the real feeling of royalty was like. You know what I mean. You say it yourselves, that you feel young on the inside, even though you are old and wrinkled on the outside. Well, that is what I felt. But let me tell you about the stains. I know it's the hardest part to believe, but please hear me out. As I told you, I collected all sorts of stains. I had fooled myself into ignoring them for years, but they were there, like it or not. And that's what makes it even more fascinating. Remember, I told you about the crown of thorns. Well, those wounds were deep, and the bleeding wouldn't stop. While he stood there, drops of blood fell on me. And that's when it happened. When his blood touched the stains from a lifetime of abuse and neglect, the stains disappeared as though they had never been there. My color returned to brilliance. Oh, what a marvelous feeling. Look at me. You don't see any stains on me now, do you? Oh, I'm still wrinkled and frayed and worn out. I'm old and I'm getting older, but there are no stains on me at all. The blood of that humble man who was crucified washed me clean. But you don't have to just sit there and stare at me. I'm cleansed by his blood. Yes, I am, but so are you. That's really what this is all about. You see, I'm going to be cast aside again once more when their fun and games were over. But Jesus' blood was shed to cleanse people, stained with the grit and grime of sin. And there's even more. After you have been cleansed by his blood, you don't have to worry about ending up back in the rag pile of life, because the people that he cleanses, he takes with him as royalty to the mansions in heaven. You have been washed with the blood of the King of Kings, so that you will wear your own robe of righteousness. Amen.